So at this time, Shakura, will you please talk about what are effective strategies you have seen to address hate in communities?
Well, I think the most important part is the word effective, because I think that's a really important piece to that question. Because what is effective to one may not be effective to a group. So I'm going to kind of answer that by sharing one of the first experiences I had at the University of Oregon around bias incident. And like I said, I came in 2000. One of the first bias incidents reported was a young African-American girl who was walking, she was a freshman, near campus, and had 3 men in khakis and blue blazers with patches spit on her and call her racial slurs. Her immediate assumption was that these were Greek men and that she had been targeted because she was African-American. And she showed up in my office. And I had been on campus about 3 weeks. I grew up in the South, so I felt like I had some tools of understanding a little bit about this, but also realized that the first effective strategy was giving her a place to talk. Giving her a place to talk about what happened and not trying to fix it right away, not trying to pretend I knew what it felt like, just letting her be angry and hurt and afraid and hearing what she had to say. That was huge, and that was a really important lesson for me because I wanted to fix it. I wanted to make it better, and that is really key. Because I think when you're in this work and you have a good heart and you want to make change, we jump to making it better. And the reality is you're taking the power away from a person who just had power ripped away from them. So you have to look back and say, okay, I want to hear you. I want to hear what you have to say. And then we can talk about what's the next step for you. So for her, the next step was figuring out what happened. She needed tools. She needed tools that could get around the bureaucracy. And one of the biggest things we do with the bias response team, because the university is a big engine of things. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of offices, it's a lot of navigation. So we needed to work through and figure out who were these people? Were they people who were part of our community? What could we do to address this? And the long part of the story, it took us a couple days to figure out, and what we did find out is actually none of our Greek men wear khakis and blue blazers and patches. We feel that they were actually from a group of out-of-state folks visiting campus for a conference. They did wear the same attire. We could never narrow down who it was. So then you have an incident that doesn't have a perpetrator, which is another piece of responding effectively to bias and hate crimes. You can't say just because we don't know who it is, we can't do anything. Because I think that's when we also get in trouble. Oh, well, we didn't know who it was. So that's when organizations like a bias response team or something that work beyond crimes can really respond to an individual, because the crime still happened, even if we don't know, or the hate incident still happened, even if we don't know who did it. It was really irrelevant at that point. And just like we're talking, it impacted a huge community. Within hours, I had the Black Student Union, the Amecha, all the student unions were calling our office because they heard about what happened and they were irate, rightly so. They were furious, they were afraid. We had community members calling and they wanted to know what was the university doing about this. Because we have a responsibility to respond. And I think what gets a little frustrating too, one of the most effective strategies is doing something. And being very conscientious about engaging all the people impacted in that response, not just the individual, but the communities. So we had a forum the very next day. And it wasn't just a couple people. It was the president of the university. It was vice presidents in all different areas. It was people who have perceived and real power at the university saying, we care about what happened to you. We're not sure we're ever going to find out who it is, but what do you need? And it was a real candid forum of, we know we can't fix it. So the next effective strategy is being very honest about our human limitations to make it better. Being a compassionate listener, coming to the table, and then from that forum of dialogue, which I think is a huge strategy, we did something. I brought this folder for folks later. It's a whole packet of things we've done. We've had anti-Semitic literature put in the library, so the next day we went to the libraries and put in the stacks literature that talks about diversity and the importance of inclusive communities. In every place we pull the flyers out of books. Because I don't know if you know this, they go in the library at the University of Oregon and they put hate propaganda in the books. So when the students check them out, they get hate propaganda in their books. There's nothing we can do about it. We've looked, we've watched, we've tried to find people. It happens. So every time we find them, now folks at the University of Oregon libraries put our affirmation of community standards in that book. It's a little something, but it's an effective strategy to combat that. And I think there's lots of little tools like that. We can't underestimate the power of listening, of coming together to talk about it and being real, of taking little steps, no matter how small they are, and building momentum around community building, of understanding we are all interconnected. And I think the most important thing is that happened in 2000. In 2004, I watched that student graduate. And that's when I knew that was effective. That strategy, that worked. It worked for that one person. She graduated, and I know she went on to graduate school, and I've talked to her since then. She sends me emails every once in a while. It was effective. And that's how we have to measure success.